Hey guys, I'm here in Bowling Green, Kentucky at the VetCon 2023. We're going to screen Leatherface 4, and then the actor who portrayed Leatherface is going to do a question and answering. So hang out with me and we're going to see what it's all about. Here's some of the Corvettes they have here at the Corvette Museum. Right through these doors is where the vendors are having the convention.
Director of the film, and we'll also have Mick Strawn, the special effects guy. So the only thing I was going to ask is after the movie, if you guys wouldn't mind kind of coming up and kind of filling the front row, just kind of make them feel like, you know, just up close and personal, so spread out. But enjoy where you're seated now. Thank you guys for coming. We look forward to this, our 8th year, and this is Leatherface 3.
Her invalid brother Franklin and their friends fell afoul of a bizarre cannibalistic clan of serial predators. Hardesty was the sole survivor of that night of terror. She died in a private health care facility in 1977. A single member of the murderous family lived to see trial. The prosecution recorded his name as W.E. Sawyer. He died in a gas chamber in 1981. The jurors concluded that Leatherface, presumed to be an unapprehended killer, was in fact an alternate personality of Sawyer's, activated whenever he donned a crude mask made of human flesh. If there was no Leatherface in reality, then Sally Hardesty may at last rest in peace. If there actually was a Leatherface, he remains at large, and the so-called Texas Chainsaw Massacre was only the beginning.
June, sometime late June, I get a phone call saying, hey, the director that they had hired dropped out for contractual reasons, so can you come in for a meeting, and you're our second choice. So that's how I got the job, really. It was because another director dropped out, and so by the time I got the job, things were really chugging along. Mick had already started constructing a lot of the sets, and because they had a release date in November, they could not miss.
See, told you. New Line Cinema and release dates will just drive you nuts.
So, and in fact, we did end up missing that release date for reasons we'll go into a little later. But anyway, so that's how I got hired. And so it was like kind of a getting shot out of a cannon, and very little time to think. You had to think on instinct or intuition. And so I cast it and worked with Mick as much as I could to refine a few things and kind of tone down the script, little did we know, and then rewrite some of the script. So it was a really rushed, for me, it was a rushed pre-production time of about 3 weeks, and which normally on a movie of that scale you'd get 8 weeks to 10 weeks as a norm. But we got very lucky in casting, and R.A. was he and I had known each other for a long time. He had been in my student film, and along with a lot of his friends. So I felt obligated to offer it to Gunnar Hansen, who was Leatherface in the first movie, and I felt that would somehow also legitimize the sequel as the true sequel, because the second movie was so far removed from the first movie. So anyway, so Gunnar, I'd known Gunnar for a little bit, and I had a real nice talk with him. He read the script. He wasn't really crazy about the script, but he still wanted to do it. But New Line would not pay him the pittance that he wanted. He said he was a very principled man, and he said, I will not do it for less than X. Absolutely not. No negotiation. And what he wanted was not a lot of money at all. I mean, it wasn't like he was, trying to hijack the production. And they turned him down. They said, no, we will not pay that. And so then I said, I got the perfect, a mountain of a man, R.A. Mihailoff, and he didn't really, I'll pass it on to him real quick. He really didn't, you auditioned, but it was a pretty cursory process. It was like, okay, here's what it looks like, and I'll let him talk about the audition process, but it was once they saw him, I think it was a fait accompli.
Sticking out. Yeah, so I get the call to go down to the New Line office. I'm going to tell you what I'm wearing because, I don't know, maybe it had, I was wearing cowboy boots, blue jeans, and a Hawaiian shirt. Not exactly Leatherface-esque wardrobe.
Leatherface on vacation.
So I walk in, it's Jeff, it's Bob Engelman, and who was it? Karen Ray? Or Vice?
No, Sarah Richard.
Sarah Richard.
Maybe Sarah Richard.
No, the casting director.
What's her name?
It's either Karen Wright,
No, it's not her.
Karen Ray, or Karen Vice.
No, neither.
Oh, Annette Benson.
Annette Benson.
Annette Benson, right?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the help.
Well, we knew when you got there.
So it was just the four of us in an office room, and you can't start a chainsaw up in an office room. You can't cut through the desk. There's one desk that's in there. So all we did was talk. And at the end of the interview, Bob Engelman looked at Jeff and he said, "Jeff, is this who you want?" And Jeff said, "Yes, it is." All right, thank you for coming in. So, I kind of pretended I had to tie the shoelace on my cowboy boot to see if Jeff would come out and give me a hint. Yeah, he did. You did. You went out, you came out to go to the bathroom, and you saw me sitting there, and you go. So.
If you guys got any questions, just raise your hand. Here we go. We got one to you next, so you can just watch the ball.
First of all, really enjoyed watching the movie. That was awesome. I'm curious if you guys can kind of speak to where the studio's head was going into this project, because as you stated, the first two were so incredibly diverse from one another. Were they just trying to get back to more traditional roots with this third movie? I mean, that's obviously
Yeah, that was one of the ideas of it. But the main thing was the driving force in the making of the movie, in having New Line do it, was a guy named Mike DeLuca, who was kind of Bob Shea was the founder of the company. Mike DeLuca was kind of his protege. And he was a fairly young guy at the time, and not that much younger than me. And it was his thing, because New Line had distributed the first Chainsaw in re-release for many years. And so DeLuca said that would be a perfect fit. And Freddy Krueger, who was the horror mainstay of New Line, was kind of, not exactly, but kind of winding down at this time, because Nightmare 5 did not do as well as anywhere near as well as Nightmare 4. So they wanted to kind of shore up the so-called franchises, and that was really the driving force of making it. And because of that, they wanted, and that's one of the problems with the movie to me is Chainsaw 1 was here, Chainsaw 2 was here, so it was inevitable we would be all somewhere in between, and so we had a kind of a little bit of an identity crisis, because we were not as outrageously comic as the second movie, and we could never match the intensity of the first movie because of how that was made and everything else. But Mick can speak, because Mick was a mainstay at New Line. He and his sister CJ had designed, I think, all the Nightmare movies, right?
Yeah.
And other movies as well for New Line. So he was essentially he was the house production designer at New Line.
Wow, that's cold.
Yeah.
So, what we were trying to do really is we were trying to go back to that concept of, I described it at the time as, all the cameras are loaded in the back of a 65 Dodge. And somebody had forgotten the key, and so we had to get a crowbar and break into it and get the cameras out, and they were dirty and funky and everything like that. And that's how I saw we wanted to go towards it. That concept was to take it back. We were supposed to be a lot more violent when we were filming. The idea was we were going to be a lot more violent, and it was an incredibly weird, difficult step because there was the MPAA was particularly prohibitive at that point, and you didn't want to get an X, you wanted to get an R rating.
You had to, yeah.
You just had to, and the thing is, the MPAA are the ones who actually make that determination of what grade you're going to get, fought us to the nail for what, a year and a half, right?
No, about 3
months just.
But the Motion Picture Association of America, which is a very powerful organization, it's basically a de facto censorship organization. It's not government run or anything. It's completely voluntary. But at that time, if you had an unrated movie, you could not get advertising in a lot of major newspapers. So you had to either get the R or live with the X. And Leatherface was the last movie rated X.
Oh, damn, you beat me to it.
After that, the rating became NC-17, which is not for children 17 and above. So anyway, so we went back. Normally, the process is you screen the movie, they give you some notes, and then you resubmit it. And on a usual horror movie at that time, maybe you'd resubmit 3 or 4 times at the most. This movie was resubmitted 11 times. And the head of the organization actually said to New Line, there is no way you're ever going to get an R on this movie. So they didn't think that it would be cut so incoherently. I don't know what version you saw. I assume you saw the unrated version, which is still a huge compromise. But because it was a very, very bloody and nasty movie in its initial stages, and
what's one of the biggest compromises you had to make?
well, I mean, it was death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, it wasn't just one. It wasn't like one big compromise.
We filmed it all.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally.
And we had really good makeup effects guys, K&B at their very beginning, really, who went on to win Academy Awards, and now Greg Nicotero is a big director. He did, King of AMC horror, really. He did Creepshow, and then The Walking Dead, et cetera, et cetera. So he was a great guy to work with.
Here, I got a little sidebar. So the nose on the Leatherface mask, well, the whole mask was made before I was even hired, but that nose is molded on the father of an Academy Award winner's nose. Howard Berger's dad.
Whoa. No, I thought you were speaking like horse car.
As long as we're bringing up the mask, I was just going to bring up that when everything had to be cleared through me. So I had to go down to Greg Nicotero, I had to go down to K&B, and I had to okay the mask. And when I did, when I got down there, all I could see was buffalo. Skinned buffalo were everywhere. And this is funny because these guys both did they had to go down there too. And literally they were doing the buffalo for Dances with Wolves, right? And every spot that you could park a buffalo. And I mean, they were everywhere. And so when I get there, I have to weave my way through all the buffalo. I had to park in between 2 buffalo. And so I go inside, and when I do, there's a table like this. And if you could imagine that the mask is on a table like there's a guy sitting here like this, and he's in a sea of buffalo. And you have, literally you're pushing them aside in order to get to the table. And he has this mask that is very complete, and it's very clean looking. And I can kind of tell that to a certain extent, these people were kind of busy with buffalo and really weren't spending a lot of time worrying about the mask. And so I said, well, is this the final one? And he said, yeah. And I said, great. And I grabbed it and I cut it up. And I cut it into pieces, and then I cut huge pieces around the eyes where they had actually left the eyelids in so that your eyelids would be next to it. And I thought that would be confusing, and so I cut those out, and then I cut the mouth had been cut like a mouth, and then I cut that in that rough look, and then I handed it back to them and I said, get a bunch of sinew and sew this thing back together, and that should do it. And that's how we got that mask.
That's really cool, man. I got a question over here as well.
What was the genesis, or whose brainchild was the homage to Excalibur for the trailer?
There's an article in Fangoria, the current Fangoria, about that very thing. And I think it was a New Line, executive decision, because the trailer was made before I was hired on the movie. And as a matter of fact, right as I signed the dotted line on the contract, that next night I went to Nightmare 5 and they were showing the Leatherface trailer. And it was a Man's Chinese Theater at the time, which was a huge theater, and it was about half full, which is still a heck of a lot of people. And the crowd went nuts for the Leatherface trailer. They went nuts. And I'm thinking that I'm sitting in the back of the audience going, I think I have a hit on my hands. I think I have a big hit on my hands.
Excuse me, I'm getting over laryngitis. Bob Engelman came up to me one day and he said, all right, we're clearing your schedule for next Thursday so you can film the trailer. That's what I remember.
That might have been the music video or something.
I don't know, but they never came back to me on it.
Yeah, the trailer was, I think
The trailer was done, yeah.
the trailer was done for almost a full year before.
Oh, all right.
I mean, a length of time before.
It wasn't me, it wasn't Kane Hodder.
Right.
Did they,
They don't tell you.
well, did they film it in America or did they?
Yeah.
Okay, then I don't know nothing.
Yeah, I got a question for RA, and then I'll take her question right there. So she's trying to.
Yes, Chad.
What's going on, man? I liked you definitely brought a different energy that hadn't been seen. What was kind of your inspiration when you took on the role as Leatherface?
Payday? No. Well, and that was part of it, but also to play an iconic horror villain. I don't know if we talked about this at lunch today, but when I was a little kid, I would sit in my room and I'd read Famous Monsters of Filmland, and I'd go, man, I wonder how you get to play the Frankenstein monster. Man, I wonder how you get to play the werewolf. Man, how do you get to play the Hunchback of Notre Dame? I was all hyped up for that. So as a kid, and then when I became an adult and actually learned that acting was a profession, I set my goal to go to Hollywood, become a movie star, and make movies with all my friends. Okay? So Leatherface was my childhood ambition, my childhood fantasy meeting my adult ambition. Bam. Wow. I was happy as a flea on a fat dog.
So how was that feeling the first time sitting in the theater and watching it on the screen and seeing yourself up there and seeing everything finally come together?
Well, the first time I saw it was at a cast and crew screening. They had sent me to New York City for a publicity junket, and I was late coming back. So I missed part of it, but it was fine. It was great.
But at that point, everyone knew that it had been cut to ribbons and it wasn't what it could have been, So there was a little, sweet and sour.
I just saw it a few minutes ago and it wasn't that bad, buddy.
Well, I'm not saying it, no. I'm sure you saw the unrated version, too.
I don't know which one.
I think that was the rated.
Did you show it on Blu-ray?
How did it end?
We streamed it. So the ending of this one was the truck exploding, the fire, and then it looks like they're driving off in the truck, finally getting away, and then of course how that.
This is not the one with the police car.
No, that that never made it. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So there was a substantial. In answer to your question previously, the biggest compromise, and I didn't have a choice in it, was in my version, Leatherface is killed, Viggo Mortensen comes back and he gets killed again. He comes back all burned and he gets killed. And Tom Everett, who plays Alfredo, is dead. So, and Kate Hodge, the final girl, is kind of losing her marbles, kind of.
This was not that version.
No, of course not. No. But Ken Foray coming back, Benny coming back, just because his head was in my version, and somewhat probably the version you saw, his head gets sawed by a chainsaw, and he shows up with a Band-Aid the next day. I mean, it just makes no sense.
There's actually a photograph in the gore zone of Ken sitting in front of his bed with the brain spilling out.
So that was you know, I mean literally, and this is not an exaggeration. When I saw the film, that version for the first time, I'm sitting in the theater. It says directed by Jeff Burr. I have no idea how the final 3 or 4 minutes, what the final 3 or 4 minutes are.
There are like at least 3 completely different endings that I've seen.
Yeah, there were a couple, but.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
anyway.
ma'am. She's tried to ask the question a couple times.
What's your question? What's your question?
It's okay.
Spit it out, spit it out.
Let us know. Anybody else got any questions? Yeah, let's go. You know what? Let's do this one over here real quick.
I wanted to know, how long did you have to sit in the chair for the makeup?
Not long at all. Because unlike the other guys who have to get glued in at 5 o'clock in the morning and stay glued in till 7 o'clock at night, it was a mask and it tied on with leather thongs. So between scenes, I'd spit out the dentures, untie the mask, sit down in my high boy chair, drink some coffee, smoke a cigar, do my Arnold imitation. Very nice, very nice. And, you know, and then, is that you? Oh,
You just seen me last weekend in Pittsburgh.
I know him. So yeah, for me it was a pretty painless process. Where you heard Mick talk earlier about how he cut bigger gaps in the mask, so it left my flesh exposed. So we had to do some prosthetic makeup, but it was just a little bit around the eyes and just a little bit around the mouth.
Yeah, the teeth went a long way. Yeah, the dentures really, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I got another question over here making my way.
Now, just curious, like something that really sticks out to me about this specific Leatherface. What was the main inspiration for the leg?
I think I'm not sure. I think that was and some people like it, some people don't. Dave Scow, who's the writer, it was in the script, and I don't know if it was an homage to the end of the first movie where he does cut himself, you know, with his own chainsaw, or the second movie. And there isn't really no continuity between any of the chainsaw movies, really.
If you understood how films were put together, and then you started to look at them going, it's amazing that they seem like they're in any kind of order anyway. I mean, it's just amazing. The Nightmares or anyone, you know, one after the other, it's just a whole new thing every time.
But like the first two are connected by the family, and the third, you're asking yourself, well, who is this family? Are these relatives? Are they cousins? Are they aunts or uncles? But that to me is kind of the saving grace of the series, or at least the first 3 or 4, is the whole family dynamic. And that was the most interesting thing for me in the movie, all the stuff inside the farmhouse and the inner workings of the family. That to me is some of the brightest stuff.
Yeah, that was fun.
The little girl. I noticed today, she was the one that I focused on this time. Going, man, that's she had a creepy performance. What was her name?
Jennifer Banco.
Jennifer Banco, right? Jennifer Banco, right?
I was just with her last weekend in Mixtron.
Yeah, she's cool. I've been with her before, but this is the time that I just really kind of like focused in on her standing in the room with all the bones and everything in it.
That was a great shot.
Tea
All
party.
right, here's a question for both of you.
Okay.
How old was she when she made that movie?
Good question. She had made Nightmare. I mean, not Nightmare. Friday the 13th, 7, I think,
Right.
Earlier. So I would say she's 10, maybe ish.
I thought she was 9.
9 or 10, yeah.
Last weekend, she told me she was 12 when she made that movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess
Playing younger though. I mean,
You guys got questions? Raise hand. Let me know. Anybody?
That's a question.
What's that? Yeah, I can ask it for you. Absolutely. She said, "Why is there 11 of them?"
The almighty dollar. I think. You know, I mean, it's one of those. It's one of those iconic franchise brands in horror, and it's way up there in recognition. I mean, everyone knows that title. They may not know the contents of each movie, but everyone knows from 10 to 100. They know Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They've heard that in their head somewhere.
It's part of the three major ones, the three main ones that came out of the 80s when they say that the golden age of monsters was in the late 30s, and that was your Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman. And then supposedly the 80s were the second great wave of horror, and the main ones would have been Freddy, Michael Myers, and then this guy. Well, actually, I guess we would have had a fourth. Would have been
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Here, let me see something. So I actually signed a contract to do 3, 4, and 5. And you correct me if I'm wrong. New Line licensed the characters for the sum of $500,000.
Yeah, something like that to get the rights to do
Yes.
the 3 movies.
And that executive made that deal got fired. But so yeah, they intended to keep making them. And the contract, I'm just a dumb old country boy. I saw the contract and they doubled my money every time. And I'm going, oh, they love me. They must love me. And so I didn't get a lawyer, and I was too cheap to get a lawyer anyway. And what I didn't find out until they made the 2003 remake is that was the bare minimum they had to offer me on consecutive sequels, because the SAG rules, Screen Actors Guild rules, say if you do a movie for scale and you do subsequent sequels, your money basically doubles. And
what might have been.
yeah, but the point is, and I found out also when I did call a lawyer when the 2003 remake was coming together, that he pointed out it wasn't my contract to exercise; it was New Line's. For me, it was not. It's called pay or play. They sign you and they have to pay you whatever, even if they don't use you. But I had a worthless agent at the time. She didn't point that out. But so I guess I'm making a long story even longer. But they plan to do at least 2 more.
Yeah, and what happened was we because of all the MPAA problems, we missed. It was supposed to come out November 3rd of '89. And it ended up coming out January 12th of 1990 with very little advertising, very little publicity. So, so the movie ended up what could graciously be called underperforming, but the real story is it bombed. It did not do well in theaters at all, but did pretty well. It did very well on video. And so it was a profitable movie for New Line, but it was not theatrically profitable, so that's why they didn't do the next one.
But as it was, even when we opened in January, we came in at number 11. Had we opened on the November 3rd, 1989 release date, I am positive we would have been well into the top 10.
No, I mean 1 or 2.
Probably.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's a frustration, but that was totally out of our control.
All right, we got a couple more minutes. Anybody else got any questions? Any questions at all?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Let me try to scoot it over. Here we go.
This is something that came up last weekend about the little girl that you was working for, where they say he makes pretty babies. Was the little girl Leatherface's child, or?
That was always my intention, yes, absolutely. Because they've got to, regenerate the family. They can, some are older, some are younger. So yeah, it would make sense. Because in this one, and in an earlier cut, it was more apparent, Leatherface is a sexual being, whereas in the first movie, he really wasn't somebody who was more of a kind of a asexual, who knows what. But in this one, he was definitely like excuse the language, close your ears. He was a horny teenager, basically. That was the intention.
Any other questions? Final questions? Yeah, we got one more over here.
I can.
All right, go for it.
This is for Mr. Burr. And it's not related to this whatsoever, but did you really just go up to Vincent Price's house and ask him to be in your movie? Is that true?
A totally true story. Very quick version. At that time in California, there was a service called a Celebrity Address Service where you paid like $5, and they had a list of names who you could get. And Vincent was in that service, and they had just gone to the DMV or something and gotten addresses. So that's how we got his address. And so the producer and I, we script in hand, and we knew he was a wine lover, so we got him a great bottle of wine. And we went up to his house, knocked it. We were freaking out in the car, going, how do we know if this is his house? We don't. Well, maybe we shouldn't go. And all of a sudden, the postman comes, and there's a package, and the postman gets out of his little cart, goes up to the door, knocks on it. Who opens the door but Vincent Price? So we know, yes, this is his house. So we screwed up our courage and went in there. He couldn't have been more gracious, he had every right to go, okay, send the script to my agent, what are you doing in my house? But it was a different era back then too, pre-Rebecca Schaefer and all that. So he couldn't have been more gracious. He invited us inside his house. We stayed there for about 30 minutes and had a wonderful talk. And he was asking all about us. He wasn't talking about himself. He was just wonderful. And the story's a lot more complicated in its conclusion, but
if there's just about anything that you want to ask about film, this guy is such an acute historian in movies and films and bizarre films. If there's something that you've always wanted, come up tomorrow and then bug him.
I would love
just poke at him.
But yeah, that is an absolutely true story. Thank you for Vincent Price. He was just so many memories of him, and it's just he was as great a guy as you thought he was. Even great. It was wonderful, wonderful. It was hell to get him to do the movie. It was heaven directing him.
Any final questions? Any final questions? We got one more.
Were there any scenes that weren't actually like scripted that you guys just left in there because they just went along with it, or they were?
A lot of the interaction in the family and stuff, absolutely. And RA and I go back and forth on this, but about who came up with it or whatever. But one of my favorite moments in the movie is the See and Spell thing with RA alone. And we missed the punch, and the punchline should have been he gets so frustrated at it that he chainsaws it. But we only had one of them, and whatever. But
I came up with that bit, buddy.
It was really hard to make that thing, I tell you. There was
I've got the microphone. I want to talk about the Speak and Spell.
Oh, go for it.
So the prop guy, what was his name?
Paul.
Jim Landis, right?
Jim Landis was one of them. Assistant Paul.
Paul Byers.
Paul Byers.
Okay, so
both has a great team.
Oh,
yeah. So he hands me this Speak and Spell. I said, what the hell do you want me to do with this thing? He goes, I don't know, do something. So my giant actor brain started thinking, and I said, I wonder if there's a image of a little boy or a little girl, and that would be sick. So I started scrolling through the thing, and the clown was the only humanoid image on the whole thing, so that's why I picked the clown. F-O-O-D. Wrong, try again. F-O-O-D. Wrong, try again. F-O-O-D. Wrong. Ah!
Thank you for that wonderful reenactment. I felt that on set again in 1989. I know.
And you notice I didn't even have the prop.
You were asking a question about a scene that was left out, and I'll tell you one that was a crack up. That was when the girl up against the tree, and he takes the chainsaw and he goes through her, right? Well, we had another shot in that, and that shot was supposed to be from the other side of the tree. And what we would see is we would see her arms flapping like this. Oh! As the end of the chainsaw came through the tree, right? So basically, here would be the tree. You would see, and the makeup effects guys got together and they created a couple of arms that mechanically gave enough room in between the arms to drive the chainsaw through. Except, every time we shot it, one or the other of the other arms would malfunction. So what we had in dailies is we had this tree, and then we had, like, we would see we'd hear the chainsaw come through, and the chainsaw, and the arms would go like this, and then all of a sudden one of the arms would get hooked up like this. And so there was one arm that kept doing it, and we never got a clean shot of it.
Yeah.
We never did. Every one of them had like twitchy and like this, but the greatest one was like for 3 times in a row, we just got the arm going down like this, and the chainsaw driving through. And so the crew would start to greet themselves as you're going out. Like, it'd be like this, it'd be like, oh, hey Bob, let's go. Hi, how's it going? And that was the universal wave. This was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre waves.
And this movie was, as you can see, it was shot night for night. Most of the schedule was nights, and so when you work, like say 3 weeks in a row, all night, so everyone's schedule, is turned around. It gets really goofy, and really goofy, and it's interesting, really interesting. And because it just some ideas come out of the ether, and it's an alternate. You're not living like the rest of the country. You're living your own alternate reality.
Back to the tree thing. Wasn't there one version where she's split up the middle?
Yes.
And
That was the one that we were supposed to see from the other side of the tree.
Yeah.
Never quite worked out.
And I want to say something about the mask. In the title sequence, you see hands constructing the mask. The second unit shot it with one of the prop guys, and they said his hands didn't look like mine, so they had me shoot it. And it was part latex foam, those pieces I was cutting, and some of it was mystery meat off the lunch truck.
That's true.
Well, we didn't have any spare masks. I mean, we pretty much just had the one mask.
I just want to, let's give these guys a round of applause. Take your time to come hang out here. Tomorrow, you guys can come and come to the table. They'll sit there and talk to you. I've had Mick, and I think the second time I've had Jeff. Humble, great people. Just come support
thank
these
you all
guys.
for coming out.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much. Make sure you go home, tell all your friends. Tomorrow we kick it off at noon. We'll be here from noon to 8. They'll be doing signings, taking pictures, all that good stuff. Thank y'all so much.
It warms my heart that a 32-year-old, going to 33-year-old movie still can get a crowd. And more people are here than an opening night, I think.
Well, thank y'all.
Thank you for coming.
Thank y'all so much for coming. Thank y'all for attending.
But I just got through watching Chainsaw Massacre 3. Watched them do question and answers. Tomorrow I'm going to come here tomorrow and get some autographs and maybe do a little bit more record. But follow me for more videos. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.